Live from the Bayside Bunker. It's another edition of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, of course, brought to you by our lovely friends over at Twin Spires. Welcome in, everyone. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. I greatly appreciate it, as this week we covered the Late Pick5 at Aqueduct for Saturday, November 22nd, as well as touch on the two stake races they have on Saturday, which are part of the NY Stallion Series, which are races 1 and 4 on the card. Again, everyone, thank you guys all so much for joining. I greatly appreciate it. I saw a bunch of people waiting in early before the show, and of course, that's always music to my ears. So thank you guys all for joining in bright and early as we kick off another edition of Bettin and Boozin. If you enjoyed the podcast tonight, please go down below the video player here on YouTube, hit the like button, and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it, because not only is it 100% completely free to do, and also the best way to help out our channel as it pushes this video and others out into YouTube's algorithm to hopefully bring more horse players to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. And again, our normal podcast schedule is scrolling on the bottom of the screen right now. You'll have every single Tuesday, once Del Mar starts getting out of what seems like a never-ending monsoon over there, will be Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, Pacific Horseplayers with Noah, Ryan, and Jackson. Wednesday, right here with Bettin and Boozin at 8 p.m. Eastern. And Thursday, every single time at 8 p.m. Eastern with Howard, Pete, and Paul. Always 365 days, or 52 weeks out of the year, we are here live on the HHH Racing Podcast. So we greatly appreciate all the support that you guys give us. You can also listen over on audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you're more of an audio listener, even though our video here on YouTube is our number one source, but if you guys are more of an audio listener, please go rate, read, and subscribe over on those platforms. We have TikTok and Instagram in forms of at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. You can follow us over there if you're into more short form content. I tend to post my picks for the day, read previews of races and general horse racing content, especially when I go out there. And, when Gulfstream Tampa Bay started out today, so hopefully everyone got some good licks in at Tampa Bay today. But when Gulfstream's championship meet starts, I will be there, all the time, and we'll definitely post some stuff over on TikTok and Instagram. So if that interests you, head on over at Bettin and Boozin Podcast. Just throw that in the search bar, and you'll be able to find us right away. The other thing that's added now to our normal podcast schedule is our brand new show called The Leaderboard. It highlights contest play, of course, brought to you by our fantastic people over at Twin Spires. It's a weekly show every single Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's live money contest strategy, recaps and previews of the previous contest, which last one that they talked about happened this Saturday. It was a qualifier, and our very own friend of the podcast and viewer, Mike Saletta, ended up winning that tournament outright, and they brought him on the show to talk about his strategy and how he got to the end of the day, of course, on top of everybody else. And of course, they preview next week's contest, which includes Saturday. Obviously, Fairgrounds is starting up now, and Matt Miller so graciously put into the ether that they are going to have Fairgrounds contests as well. So if that interests you, head on over to twinspires.com and hit their tournament tab to see what's coming up on Saturday. Of course, you can see right here as I bring the graphic up on the screen right now, just live money contest play strategies, highlighting upcoming events. Again, there's a tour points leaderboard that Twin Spires holds. So if that interests you, as you're if you're a contest player, again, there's contests as low as $40 on there, up to somewhere like $500 to $1,000 if that interests you. Of course, there's a ton of qualifiers. NHC they had this past weekend for Vegas. They also have Kentucky Derby betting challenge seats. Tons and tons of stuff going on over in the contest space over at Twin Spires. And of course, you have our normal podcast pick, HHH Racing Podcast tip sheet, known as the Power Picks. It's all done through Patreon, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Every single Saturday, you get these sent to you for 2 full tracks of price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. We here at the HHH Racing Podcast have you covered with the Power Picks. Very affordable. And again, you get a ton of information. $4.99 a weekend, $21.60 overall, which is how Patreon bills it, and still well in the profitable margin through almost 1,000 total picks over the last almost 5 years now. So if you're not part of our Powered Picks tip sheet, you definitely want to start thinking about it. And you can also look at previous editions of those Power Picks before you buy them over on HHHRacingPodcast.com. Or if you just want to learn more about us, you can also find that over there as well. A ton of new stuff coming your way as well through the start of the new year. Gulfstream, then obviously on the road to the Kentucky Derby as well. So make sure you stick with us here. But guys, we'll get right into the handicapping as always, but we need to bring on our co-host to be able to do that, and that is the lovely man from the East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Consul, my friend. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Kyle. How we doing tonight?
Always blissful, especially without two of those younger guys that walk in here and seems like they never stop talking sometimes. So without them, it'll be pretty quick, honestly, with me and you, as usually is.
Well, yeah, we'll get straight to the point, right? Talk about who we like, why we like them. No jibber jabber on the other side. Give each other some nudges here and there.
No 1.5 minute diatribes by any chance. But anyway, guys, I see a bunch of people watching again. We greatly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys are new or returning and you haven't commented in the live chat before, please do so. It's on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. We read every single one. Katie, Ralph Conti, happy episode 156. Let's hope it'll be a happy episode 156, and we'll get you guys some good picks here. Terry Frank, of course, was here, and Katie was here a long time ago, as they always are. Guys, let's get right into the handicapping. Again, there's 2 stakes races outside the Late Pick 5. Go through those real quick, as that's 5 horses and 7 horses. It's in part of the New York Stallion Series. As I said, then we'll get into the Late Pick 5, which Late Pick 5 is very, very competitive and stout. There's the Late Pick 5, 10 horses, 13 horses, 9 horses, 9 horses, 12 horses. So lots of different ways that you can end up going in those. But as I mentioned, Pat, it all starts in race number 1 of all things, which is not something we usually say here on the podcast. The New York Stallion Series, a field of 5, and it's one of those races, Pat, out in New York, that they run against each other a lot. And it's Dr. Kraft, Bank Frenzy, General Banker, Doc Sullivan, and Jackson Heights. Again, I feel like you could name off those 5 in the last 6 races these horses have ran, and you'd come up with pretty much, the very similar races. I'll show the last race, Pat. That was won by the number 2, Bank Frenzy. Of course, you had Whittington Park in there as well. It was another one of those, but you also had the number 1, Dr. Kraft, in there as well. Again, really nicely run race between all these, as they usually do. But again, the number 2 in this race, who's the number 5 here, Bank Frenzy, comes out on top with a really nice trip.
Yes, that's the perfect stalking trip under Manny Franco last out. And he's done that quite often, Bank Frenzy. Very tactical, able to sit on the pace or near the lead, or come from well out of it and make a middle move. And that's what he does. He's a very game horse. Just the type of horse that you want as an owner, right? New York bred that just hits the board every time, runs his race, and is really courageous on the lead. And that's what he was in here. And it's just these races are cool because, like you said, they knock heads every race, these horses. And you just don't know from a handicapping standpoint, you're going to get decent odds just because, it's wide open. These horses give it, take it every other day.
Yeah, and obviously they'll probably somewhere be around 2-1 like they were in this race. Your favorite Iron Dome, who's not in here, ended up being the favorite that day. Didn't run necessarily like it. You'll see number 3, Dr. Kraft, who's again in number 1 in this race, kind of just flatten out there. I thought Doc Sullivan got a really interesting trip. He was kind of in behind horses and really kicks in late here. Just finishes, ends up, actually, it looked like he was going by about right here, where the inside's not where you want to be at Aqueduct, and it really hasn't been over the last, 3 years at this point. However, he looks like he's going to go by, and then Bank Frenzy ends up just beating him out at the wire. My top pick in here would be Doc Sullivan. I know number 1, Dr. Kraft, again, should show a little bit of speed, but really hasn't been that fast necessarily, unless he's, especially at this sprinting distance. Obviously, the last time was at the 1 1/8 there, which is a completely different scenario than what's this race running in flat 7. He hasn't really shown that type of speed going a sprinting route or sprinting distance over instead of a route distance like he did last time. So I'd expect Bank Frenzy and Doc Sullivan to be out in front. You can see even when he runs that 1 mile or 7 furlongs at Aqueduct, he's still generally either on or very near the lead. Joel Rosario hops back aboard this one. So, and you could argue that 7 furlongs is a better distance for this horse, even though he ran so well at 1.125 miles last time. You can just check the company lines that this horse has kept running in the Forgo and the Vosburg. One at, obviously, the Forgo at Saratoga, the Vosburg at Aqueduct. So Doc Sullivan would be my top pick in here, although, again, I wouldn't fault anyone for taking other horses such as Bank Frenzy, maybe even Dr. Kraft in here, who's ran some really nice races at the distance, just hasn't gotten that elusive win at 7 furlongs. Is he 6 for 7 in the money? However, none of those on the win end. Pat, the other New York Stallion Series race is the 4th race, and I'll scroll to it right now. This is the filly and mare version of the same exact race that we talked about. 7 furlongs, same type of thing. Draws a field of 7, however. And in this race, I'd argue, even though that last one you could argue is wide open, but we kind of know how they all run. This race, you could argue, is even more wide open than the last.
Yeah, for sure. This is most definitely wide open. And these horses have some form that is kind of muddied up. And in terms of, it's just, I don't know how really good they are. We look at the other race, and I just feel like those are horses that are at the top of the class, and probably some of the better crop of New York breds running at that time, at that age. In here, all consistent horses. It's just, I look at the 7 Sunday Girl, who, she runs consistently, but she's really struggled in her last 3, and her form has really, really dropped. Did run in that last race, lost to Sterling Silver, my main squeeze in there, but horse just didn't run well. Now gets Pratt aboard, and draws to the outside, which could be beneficial with speed. And that's kind of what I'm thinking here. But there is other signed on, right, Kyle? So,
yep,
yeah, this is a tough race. I think the 1, 4, and 7 pretty much have to go. And then it's going to be a matter of who's gonna pick up the pieces. Because we do know the 3 Solo Shot, who does it on the turf, is going to come from the clouds.
Right. And that's the thing. You've actually mentioned exactly why I like the number 7 Sunday Girl in here. Gets Pratt aboard, but also draws to the outside with speed to her inside. And the fact that she can either she sat that outside stalking trip before. Again, this was earlier in this year, however. But she's been able to rate. She's been able to be on the lead. There's just many different avenues that Sunday Girl can win. And honestly, if she runs any types of those numbers, she wins this race outright. Kali Magic has basically like 2 of those races that Sunday Girl has ran in terms of the numbers and can win. This is the time form PPs, of course, not the buyer PPs. But I am 7-4 Deuce in here. Midtown Lights is one of those that might be a little bit closer than Solo Shot, which, again, just a very interesting move by Cantormachi to put this horse on the dirt versus the turf, but obviously off the claim, Cantormachi sees something in her. Midtown Lights is just one of those, again, for Safi Joseph, off the claim from Cantormachi. Hopefully can sit a little bit mid-trip and just hang on for a piece. But Sunday Girl is definitely going to be my top pick. Again, you talked about it, Pat, just keeping a lot of good company in here. Gets Pratt aboard, will be my top pick, because, again, I'm 7-4 Deuce. But, Pat, let's get into the Late Pick 5 here, as that's the races we are here to talk about today. But I would feel remiss if we didn't talk about the two stakes races on the entire card. But this starts the really, really good stuff and really competitive races. Race 6 is a maiden special weight, 6.5 furlongs, 2-year-old maidens. This late in the year, Pat, the 2-year-old maiden division can start heating up a little bit here. Obviously, this is more of a sprint than a route. And but we're gearing up now for races like the Remsen and stuff like that. So these 2-year-old races can really, really be good. This is a field of 10, Pat, and I'll bring up our picks on the screen right now. You're going with the number 6, Dark Force, Eric Cancel for George Weaver. I'm going with the number 10, Dark Assault for Shug McGahee and Joel Rosario. We both have hedge ratio in second. Pat, you have Ovechkin, fantastic name. In third, I'm going with the number 7, Marble Hall in third. But Pat, I'll let you talk first about your top pick, Dark Force, who realistically should be a little bit of a price off of a first-time starter, when a lot of these horses that have ran before should take a majority of the money.
Yeah, there's some Kyle, you hit it on the head with there's some pretty penny horses in here that, you do wonder that are making their debut, if they're eventually looking to stretch out to get the 2 turns to think big down the road. Obviously, it's too soon to think that, but it's
Right.
just kind of where we're at the point now, right? We're at that stage where we got to start thinking that into the winter season. And I think with Dark Force and George Weaver, Kyle, I just his numbers at Aqueduct and at the Big A, at the Big A this year and over the last, his numbers have just been really, really good. And I just can't get behind the fact that he does really well with sprinters. This horse has been working really well. I just think all signs point to this horse being a bit of a price and somebody that I want in here. Just because others in here that, are, I think, maybe a little more talented from the breeding standpoint, I'm just not going to get the price. And I don't know. I just think they may need one. And I'm hoping Weaver always has his horses ready to go. And I think on Saturday, Dark Force could be a pretty nice price and look to really be pretty fast out of the gate.
I mean, I'll tell you what, one thing that if anyone should take one thing, what you said, it's that George Weaver's been pretty damn good over the last couple of years. Obviously, Kadira was a really nice horse in her own right. She was the listed black type stake winner, and she ran in a bunch of different, she ran in the Honeybee, got third behind 8 Bells, who was the eventual, did she, I'm not going to incriminate myself there, but you can see the sibling PPs, Paula Queen came back. She was a winner of the test in 2016. So obviously this progeny line has a bunch of talent. And obviously you get George Weaver and a price could be a horse to try and take a shot with. I do like that pick, Pat. I'm going with the number 10, Dark Assault. Shug McGahee with another Cold Violence, obviously had a very nice stallion career, especially at the 2 years old, winning 18%. This is not a first-time starter, but I kind of like that, although I will take a hit from the price. This is a Phipps stable homebred. They always, obviously, a little bit before my time in the game, they were huge. They've gotten a little bit, not smaller, but a little bit lesser known, I guess, if you will, to the newer type of crowd, but they're still have a ton of really good horses. Power Move was one that ran in listed stakes. No winners yet, and Night Angel was the other, and 4 Beach Friends. However, Night Agent was also one for Shug McGahee, or still is one. She ran at Keeneland in the spring, didn't get a win, but this one has shown flashes, and I like that she's going to be forwardly placed because in a race with a lot of first-time starters, the general consensus can be that if you want to get to the lead, you might have the best chance to win that day. And Siggy Mendoza, Siggy, my friend, welcome in. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. 1 and 10 are the obvious horses. I don't think you're saying anything there. The only first-time starter I'm interested in is Feroce for Summers, who will go over here in a second. Is the number 4 horse, who none of us have in there anywhere. But that was one horse, especially with Chad Summers, who does very well with his 2-year-olds, especially, but at Aqueduct as well. So that's one thing I want to point out. Hedge ratio, Pat, again, ran a really nice race, ended up getting 3rd off the disqualification last time out. It's Chad, it's Pratt. This one's going to take a bunch of money, but also does draw the rail.
Does draw the rail, yep. It's just, you'd like to see improvement right off that second start. I do get, going to the different surface change, but I didn't see much improvement at all, and he wasn't betting that race, so I'm a little concerned about that. But listen, if this horse does improve, there is some pedigree here where sprinting should not be a problem. So I would not be shocked if this horse runs way, way better 3rd time out than than he has in the past, considering this barn has just been, gosh, they're winning all different ways. Even when the horse isn't bet, I mean, his horses aren't bet, he's winning. So I think hedge ratio, this horse obviously has talent. I mean, he's been put in races. I mean, look at that race in August. We look at those horses' names. We were there, right, Kyle?
Yeah, we were there.
We remember watching Teddy's Rocket win on debut, and we were all like, wow. And yeah, those are a couple pretty nice horses that he faced on debut too.
Shout out to Brett Anderson there for Teddy's Rocket. Obviously, that was a big hit for the man. But hedge ratio, again, I like the second time off dirt. Again, it's just a matter of how much money he's going to take. Drawing the rail is something I don't tend to gravitate towards, especially in 2-year-old races at Aqueduct. Granted, they're not coming out of the chute. That would be almost the biggest no-no, is that if they're coming out of that chute on the rail with a 2-year-old. So she does get a little bit bump. And obviously, if she improves off that 75, she's a winner here, unless someone completely freaks. But again, you're not getting the price to find out if she can take another step forward second time on the dirt. Again, Feroce, I think is how you say that. Siggy, I do like Feroce as well. Ghost Zapper, Poet's Dreams from McLean's Music has had a winner. Granted, it was at 3 years old, but Poetic Fury ran at Oaklawn in the winter and got a winner for Lindsay Schultz. So that's always nice to see a progeny winner in there. Ghost Zapper has always done really decently with his 2-year-olds, winning at 15%. Granted, first-time starters are only 10%, but still, this horse is working really well for Chad Summers. So it's always the thing to take a look at when he has one in there. Marble Hall is that same type of thing. Just Belmont doesn't work his horses very fast. I know he doesn't win, let alone first time out or with his 2-year-olds very often, but Charlatan's been a very interesting case to start his career as a stallion. Wins 13% to 2-year-olds, however, only 9% on the first time starter. That's 4 for 41. And Forrest Gamble is a horse that has had plenty of progeny to take a look at, but is 8 for 12 in the money in terms of her 2-year-olds that have ran, and 33% on the win end. So definitely one I at least want to have in there, especially if that horse is taking money on the board, which is the beauty of what we have in front of us, being that this is the first leg of the Late Pick 5. Ovechkin, Pat, again, I'd be remiss if we didn't get to talk about this just because of how good of a name it is, obviously named after the greatest goal scorer of all time in Alex Ovechkin. Mark Hennig is one of those also, Pat, like Belmont, who doesn't win very often at all with his first time outs or 2-year-olds. But again, this one sold for $400,000. Blonde Bomber, the Dam was a nice horse in her own right. So, and has had progeny that has won pretty decently as well. Half to Bling, although again, not the correct surface that Bling has run on. However, the talent is obviously there.
Yeah, with the big price tag, you do wonder how far this horse does want to go. And Mark Henning, first time out is not very good. I'll be honest, but what I will say is I just think the way this horse has been working, we're kind of at the point in the season 2 where I think the bigger trainers. And you could let me know if you feel this way too, Kyle. Like I feel like with the 7. Marble Hall, I don't want to look at it as a negative, but it kind of I take a step back looking at, a Belmont horse running now on debut over a Mark Henning who, has a horse here for $400,000 that has been working really well, is bred pretty nicely and is going to, go on debut in a tough spot. And I take that as a big positive more than others in here. And I think this horse is going to be a bigger price. And that's that's
definitely
the way I'm
going to be a bigger
it.
price. I'll tell you that much. And obviously with Mark Hennig's stats going first time out, you're going to get an inflated price at that, obviously for good reason. But if that horse can run, who has been working very well as well, that could be one to win in a very tough first leg. Because for me, if it's not the 1 or the 10, it can be a lot of other horses in here. I'm going 10-1-7. Pat's going 6-1-5 to kick off the Late Pick 5 at Aqueduct on Saturday. Pat, on to the next race. It is a 1 1/8 turf route, an allowance optional 50,000 for fillies and mares. It draws a full field of 10 that they run on the turf at this time of year. However, there's 2 also eligibles and 1 main track only. Pat, I'll bring up our picks on the screen right now. We are both going with the same top 2 horses in here, which I don't feel like is very, it's too creative necessarily. However, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go in this one as well, which will be a common theme throughout all 5 of these races. You're going with the number 7, Sione Flash for Castellano and Kenny McPeak. And I did my homework, Pat, because I did not want to get this one wrong. I did my homework because I didn't know how to say this right. It's Kinane for Flavian Pratt and Brad Cox. Pat, going to you first. This is a horse.
Chris Griffin helped us, right, Kyle?
He did very much so. He helped us between him and I believe it was Frank Miramati helping me out with that one. So thank you to both of them for helping me at least look somewhat competent on this show, barring what my picks do on Saturday. Sione Flash Pad is one I'm very interested in as well, having second. Going a mile and 3/8 broke her maiden, and then last time ran a mile and 3/16. Just didn't get there, but was bet decently on the day. Galileo breeding. I mean, there's a lot to like here, especially with a horse that continues to improve every race.
Yeah, Kyle, that last race, Luis Proctor, the horse that ended up winning, was a horse that just really couldn't find the winner's circle for Chad, and I just feel like it was just a matter of time before she did, and once she did, I think she's going to be pretty talented. And I just feel like watching Sayuni Flash in that race. She, wasn't involved at all much early, but then that late kick really led me to believe, that just a mile and a half, a mile and an eighth distance will be perfect for her. And I just feel like the steady improvement in here. The horse just seems to be pretty fit. I mean, McPeak's running this horse. This will be the fourth time, in 2 months or a
Yep.
little, just around a little over 2 months. This horse has to be pretty fit, and I really like the way this horse is trending right now.
I'll tell you what, Pat. I was so close to putting this horse on top, and honestly, I had her on top for a long time. There's just other reasons that gravitated me towards the 8. But obviously, breeding is a top notch in here. I love the steady progression. And you are right, Pat. I feel like mile and eighth will be what this horse wants. However, I'm worried that last race, granted, they didn't go very fast up front. However, she closed really well, just at a mile and 3/16. Obviously, she just got there by a nose, but they did go. I don't think I've ever seen 120 before to the 3/4, and
Yeah.
they hit that for sure. Granted, it was at a mile and 3/8, not a mile and an eighth, but just ended up getting there at mile and 3/8. So the distance, I guess, could be a question mark. You argue that, with Sione and Galileo in there, you could argue this horse maybe even wants longer, but Kenny McPeak is going to put her back to a mile and an eighth. So if Castellano can keep her a little bit closer, as he should know her by now, rode her the last 2 times. Sione Flash is definitely a win contender in here. Kinane is one of those to me that it's really weird, to be honest with you. Shout out to Terry Frank, my friend, Rainbow's End Racing Stable. You can see her in there. She ran so well in that mile race at Saratoga that I was so surprised that they put her back at 6 furlongs for back-to-back starts. Manny Franco rode her all the time. Now you're getting Pratt aboard, so you'll take that kind of a hit with the betting. But this race here, I mean, this race came back, hasn't been necessarily the best withstanding, but competitive threat came back to run some nice races, including the last one at Belmont, just lost by 2.5, getting a 76. Really, a lot of horses have kept their form in there. Artistic Success was actually a horse that I liked last weekend, obviously for the terrible news of myself, but I just really like this race by Kinane because this is, coming from 6 furlongs, you'd expect this horse to be, headstrong up front, wanting to go to the lead, but she sat really, really nicely. And this is a race. She's the one right here to the inside. And as I continue to skip through this, she's rating really nicely at a mile. Manny Franco's going to get her to ride the rail the whole way, tip out at about the 8th pole, a little bit before the 8th pole, but it's going to tip out anyway. And she's going to really finish up well here. So it makes me think the distance is going to be no issue. And if Pratt keeps her somewhere in that mid-pack, I don't think the extra 1/8 of a mile is really going to be that big of a problem just based on that replay alone. That's one thing that we've gotten a lot of, I've gotten a lot better at, is visually handicapping these horses. Obviously, you can look at this and be like, oh, she's 0 for 6 at Aqueduct on the turf. Yeah, but every single one of those races has been a turf sprint. And going off that route at Saratoga, I feel like she's really got a big chance to win this, Pat. Obviously, you have her in second, and the public should think so. Cox Pratt, you're not going to get a big price. I'm hoping for somewhere around 3-1, 7-2. 3-1 is probably the more likely. And if I get that, I think that's good enough for me to take a chance on this horse.
Yeah, I think you're going to get that, Kyle. And I think that's going to be very positive because I do think that between the 7 and 8, they're both going to vie for favoritism in here, I would think. And with Kinane, kind of running at a distance that we both think she doesn't really want to run at, that should be beneficial to us. And I think that, in this race, there's other horses that are coming out of the same races. Like, I'm going to go into
Yep.
the 4 here, Trail of Gold, really quick, just because, Trail of Gold did face a couple others in here last time. And I think there's just others watching that replay that just, I don't want it all. Like the 5, Pookie, she just had every reason to want to. She should have won that race last out. Just didn't really. 2 back, and just didn't really run well, sitting right on the lead. But I think with Trail of Gold, this horse does have a really good late kick, and wasn't able to use it last time just because the pace, they were really slow. Pratt walked the dog with National Archive on the lead there. That horse was 4-5 that day, but I'm going to give Trail of Gold another chance to hit the board in here. I think this horse is really steady, still 3 years old, getting better as we go. And I think this horse is a pretty good New York bred.
Yeah, I mean, definitely can. She's ran the races that need to be able to hit the board in here. One that's going to be a little bit farther back, but I will say, Pat, the one thing that you will see in here, and the thing that I'm kind of worried about for a lot of these horses, especially the horses that you mentioned, is there's really no speed in here at all. I mean,
doesn't the time force say no speed?
It does. You don't see that very often. They have Kinane on the lead, which I wouldn't. I mean, it's Pratt, so I'll trust him. I trust him. I always say with my firstborn child. But obviously, the 1 is the horse that's going to be the closest up there to the 8. They're banking on the 8, obviously having that sprinting speed, like I mentioned, Pat. However, she didn't go to the lead at a mile last time. Obviously, they went faster than 53, whatever the heck I said before. But I wouldn't be obviously upset if Pratt's on the lead with my horse going, 49-4. I wouldn't exactly be upset at that. But yeah, there's just really no speed in here at all. And the one wild card horse in here is number 9 Perky, in my opinion. Horse hasn't been seen since Tampa Bay. Obviously, this will be the first run under Miguel Clement. But off this type of layoff, Miguel's been really, really good at this move. And if she's running 72s, as in a very early 3-year-old, now she's given time to develop, and now coming back to this race, I think it's going to be a pretty big ask to get her to win first time off that layoff. But if she runs in, you guys are ass. You guys are not nice to me, is what I meant to say. But if she runs back and improves, maybe even off those 72s, you could argue she's a win contender in here too. Kitten's Joy out of a Giants Causeway mare. This horse wants to run forever on the turf. And if she gets a nice setup and maybe sits that type of trip that she ran in her first time out race where she won by 3 3/4, this horse has every chance to win. Obviously, it's going to have to be with that little bit of a layoff. But again, you might get the price to find out with a couple others in here. I'm going 8-7-9. Pat's going 7-8-4. Pat, let's move on to race number 8. And Matt and Howard are just going after me in the chat. They're saying, you're asking what's the name of my firstborn child. My firstborn child will not be named Pookie. That's for damn sure. I can promise you that. And he goes, then my child will not be named Aladdin or Ariel. I can promise you that. Aladdin might not fit my, what I got going on, but I do appreciate
Gosh.
Mufasa. Okay, guys, come on. All right, we gotta reel it back in here. Pat, we gotta move along. Race number 8 is a starter allowance 50,000, going 6.5 furlongs, field of 9, and some really nice, nice horses in here as well. You have the number, you have the number 7 on top, Ranger Battalion, Jose Lascano, Linda Rice. I have the number 1, Remy's Moon on top, Manny Franco, George Weaver. We both have Coffee Talk in the mix somewhere. You have Remy's Moon in 3rd, while I'm going with Timaeus in 2nd, the number 4 horse. Pat, I'll let you go first. Again, number 7, Ranger Battalion. What'd you like most about him in this race?
Yeah, Kyle, you're not all in on Coffee Talk,
No, I'm not. No, I'm not off of that last race. I'll tell you. I'll be honest with you.
Oh wow, is that a hole in the wind? Listen, with Ranger Battalion in here, he runs steady every race. He really does. He did. I did wonder if he just didn't want to win anymore. Was just having trouble getting to the wire there. But he is really, really, really run against some tougher competition. And he has been favored. I do get it. He's been chewing up a lot of money. I really want to bet this horse again because he's not going to be the favorite in here, and I feel like he's going to kind of be dismissed, honestly, in ways. So I'm really hoping that I can get, he'll be the strong second choice, and I could just have a nice, win bet on him. But I don't know what you thought, Kyle. I just feel like whether obviously the paces weren't too quick considering that 7 furlong race just was it is what it is. But I really think getting the outside draw. Linda does really well at this starter allowance level. So I'm hoping that this horse runs way better and can obviously win this race considering what he's done in the past.
Yeah, and the thing is, Pat, is obviously you wouldn't notice it by my picks. I'd much prefer this horse than to the 9. I mean, we'll show the actually we'll just show the 9 now. You have the horse in second. Coffee Talk for David Jacobson last time. I mean, my God, I have no idea where that came from. I had the horse to win that day, dropping from to that 50 claimer last time for David Jacobson at Keeneland, but. I mean, it was crazy. Like just that horse was flying. They went 22-3, 46 flat. I know that was a time where front end at Keeneland was just very, very good. But I mean, like Pat said, that's a hole in the wind. I mean, that's just a quintessential. I need to see that again before I can bet this horse at 2-1, probably. It's not for me personally. However, I do understand he could win by 10 again, get another 94 buyer, and then I look like an absolute moron. But in terms of Ranger Battalion, Pat, he's also ran some really nice races that can win this race. Going back to that, granted it was on a sloppy track, but that 100,000 claimer that he ran easily does really well in this field. In a race where, again, there's not a whole lot of speed in here. I feel like Ranger Battalion could be that horse to kind of surprise them. And you are right, Pat. Being the other Linda Rice, if you will, I feel like this one might fall a little bit under the radar, and you might get at least a decent price to try and take a shot in there. I'm taking a shot against both of them, and it might be just dumb, but George Weaver, I know he didn't run so well last time, but he tried to go to the mile and a 16th distance last time versus the 7 furlongs that David Jacobson had been running him in. Didn't run very well last time. Basically can cross a line through it, in my opinion. Just not what this horse wants to do at all. Comes back to the sprinting at Aqueduct that he's done. Just the sprinting, rather, not at Aqueduct, of course, but the sprinting distance that he's done so well with before. 77, 78. Needs to take a little bit of a step forward to improve here, Pat. But I think you're going to get the price to find out at least.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. I definitely think the price is going to be right. With Remy's Moon. And yet, I mean, Weaver has great numbers, doing this, off the claim. And I just feel like that last race, horse just didn't really run a step at all, and did have a little bit of trouble. But two back that race, Kyle, like you said, fits right in here. Is going to be. They have middle of the pack here. I think this horse will be more forwardly placed as Weaver's runners usually are, but there's others in here like the 5 Social Hour, who is just a known commodity of not being able to hold a lead, and now this horse is going to try and stretch out a little bit. I don't know how much I trust that. So yeah, I'm with you on the 1. I think that's a nice price, and I think that's a very worthy of an underneath play for me, at least.
You hit it on the head, Pat. I would love to see Remy's Moon be more aggressive. And coming back to that 7 furlong, like you said, I don't know if he didn't just break well or something like that. Like it says brush start in the comments. Really just never got into the race, like you said. Never really lifted a hoof, if you will. But now coming back to a distance again, he likes to be forwardly placed. Would love to see Manny be a little bit aggressive with this horse. While like you said, maybe the 5 just is always going to be a stopper. So maybe you tuck in behind or to his outside, let him fade away and be able to fly at the end. Would love to see something like that with Remy's Moon. But again, somewhere around 5-6-1, I think you might get. And that'd be a good enough price to take a shot on the win end, albeit not my best opinion on the whole day, but I feel like it still might be worthy of one. Timaeus is a horse I have in second for that same type of pace angle, right? Where he's shown that he can stalk in behind. granted at lesser company, but can still has that type of trip that can win this race. Being with that 85 buyer, I would say you have to see it again. However, you saw back in early March, he ran an 82 buyer. So it's just very inconsistent, but he does have the talent. And if he puts it together on the day, I could easily see him winning as well. But again, you feel like you could say that about a bunch of them in another wide open race as part of this late pick 5. In race number 8, I'm going 1, 4, 9. Pat's going 7, 9, 1. Guys, if you guys are enjoying the podcast tonight, we'd greatly appreciate if you go down below the video player here on YouTube, or if you're on X, please come on over to YouTube, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. We also are graciously brought to you in part by TwinSpires. We have a fantastic show every single Wednesday called The Leaderboard at 7 p.m. Eastern. It talks about live money contest play. You do not have to be a professional contest player by any means to listen into this. They talk strategy, how you should play this. They even they bring up recaps of the previous contests on the weekends, the previous weekends, and they talk about the plays that they made to be able to win. This week, a very good fan of the podcast and friend of ours, Mike Saletta, ended up winning this past week. So they brought him on to talk about, what was going through his mind and how does he ended up winning that contest. So it's a ton of good information. So please tune in after this podcast, of course, to the Leaderboard brought to you by TwinSpires every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. But not only that, Pat, we have Weekend Warriors that are back every single Saturday, at least for this foreseeable future, talking about these TwinSpires contests while they're going. They bringing up in live time what people did, where's the leaderboard going, who's jumping up. Obviously, Matt Miller was leading, who's on the show. Obviously, you fans of the podcast know who he is. He was on top for 80% of the entire 90% of the entire contest. So obviously seeing it through his eyes, literally in live time, is really cool to see. So would highly recommend coming on to Weekend Warriors. It's about 2 hours every single Saturday, and I'm trying to bring up the exact time this weekend. I do apologize to everybody out there that I don't have it. It is at 4 p.m. Eastern, usually goes to about 6, so it's about a 2-hour show every single Saturday. It's great information, especially if you are interested at all in the horse racing contest standpoint. Pat, let's move on to race number 9, and this is another allowance optional. However, this one's for $75,000, going 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds and older. And Pat, I mean, this is the quintessential comeback race that you really want to see in a race like this. The number 2 Knightsbridge for Junior Alvarado Belmont, it's quintessential ouchie horse, if you will. This is a horse that's run once every 250 days.
Yeah.
It's super interesting, but very glad to see him back again because I do think he's very talented. The number 9 BU for Pratt and Pletcher, who I have on top in this race. Pat, you are going with the number 2 Knightsbridge in here. Again, I mentioned it, Pat. This horse seems like he runs once every, blue moon, if you will. But when he runs, he always runs his race, and he's run some very, very nice ones at that.
Yeah, you feel like this is a 2-horse race, but then you look at how these horses have run, and it's like, well, this could be wide open considering, the intangibles that are coming with these two. And with Knightsbridge, Kyle, the talent is just so evident, and I see the consistent works. This horse has been working, for very steady since the middle of September. So that definitely makes me happy and believe this horse is sound and healthy. You do wonder how this horse is going to come back, because it is coming back into, some decent competition. But the thing that got me here, Kyle, is this horse has speed, early speed, and has a tremendous advantage in this race. If this horse shows his early speed, his pace rating on time form is 22 points higher than the next, and that's the 5. I can't go beyond that. I just think this horse's speed is going to get to the lead, not have anyone near him, and is going to just be able to kind of run away with it. That's the way I envision it. But I do understand why you're going with the 9 in here. But would love to hear, what you have to say about Knightsbridge, if you want to give this horse a race or, where you're at.
Yeah, and I will say, Pat, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and Siggy brought it up before me because, obviously very astute viewers in the chat, man. wondering why Knightsbridge missed a week after the Bullet on November 4th. You can see he ran 57-4 on the Oklahoma November 4th. Then didn't work again until November 16th, which is 12 days later. Maybe something went wrong, obviously. That's not out of the realm of possibility with this horse. It's just so many question marks with him, Pat. I can't trust him on the win end. I do like that you brought it up and that he's been working basically every single week since middle of September. So people, asking, is he ready? He should be every bit of ready. However, obviously, as Siggy Mendoza brings up, that 12-day gap versus the 7 to 8 day gap that they've always had with him over the last 2 months could be a concern. Not the biggest concern for me. However, I do understand where that's coming from. And obviously it plays into my hand decently as I'm going with the number 9 BU. And this off of a 440-day layoff, I believe, last time, Pat. This horse came from the absolute clouds of Keeneland. And this was a time, especially sprinting, Pat, where there's nobody coming from behind, let alone, 5th, 6th place, let alone 10th by 6 3/4. He was flying late, and coming off of that layoff, now back into this race. My hope, Pat, is that he will not be that far back. You can see early in his career, granted, I know it was 2 and 3 years old, respectively, but he had the ability to sit a little bit closer, and I'm hoping second off that layoff, gets a little bit more fitness into him. Maybe he wasn't even supposed to win that race. Maybe a race in New York was always the type of plan. However, I don't think that's necessarily the case, being how he ran in Kentucky. If that was the case, he probably would have ran in New York and ran for something bigger. But that 93 buyer off that type of layoff on a completely not biased track, if you will, or the people could say that, on a track that was not playing to that type of strength at all. I just feel like, and you get Pratt aboard in here. If anything, I trust Pratt to be a little bit more aggressive with this horse, especially if Knightsbridge is going to get away. And I assume he's going to be a very low price again in here, Pat. And again, I don't fault you at all for picking him on top, especially with the type of advantage on paper that he could have. It's just so hard to trust that horse.
Yeah, no, and I completely get it. I look at BU, Kyle, the kind of horse that I always thought highly of, was put into stiff competition early on. Just really didn't win much early on. I mean, when did he break his maiden? He broke his maiden in March of 24, right?
Yep.
At Gulfstream. But this horse was put right into deep waters. Yeah, listen, that race was impressive. And there's some horses that are that were in that Keeneland race, that do run low 90 buyers, speed figures, like Multiverse, and Pursuit Never Sleeps. I don't know. I want to see it to believe it again with BU. That horse needs to do it back to back for me. I'm hoping Knightsbridge is ready to go. The one thing I will say with regarding the workouts, and I don't know how much to read into it. I looked at a couple horses for Belmont that actually, and the 6. Is it the 6 or the 7 in our first leg? Marble. Was it Marble Hall? That horse had a gap in his workout recently too. I'm wondering if he's shipping all his horses out of Saratoga down to Belmont, and if that was kind of the case, where they just weren't able to really register or work.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of a common theme when I looked at a couple horses in his barn. So I don't know. I could be off base, but that could be a reason.
That could absolutely be a reason. Obviously, Terry Frank says it seems like a setup for a stakes race, which also could easily be the case. However, if he is just better than these horses, he could just easily win here as well. I have the number 1 Crushed It in third. Patter Pop Racing, Fernando Abreu off the claim. I know he's back in for the 75, but they claimed him for 50, so it's not the biggest deal in the world to me. Has run very well at Aqueduct and has run well at the sprinting distance. Granted, it was at Delta Downs, but this is one that's going to sit closer to the pace to Knightsbridge, who could easily get in the money with some of these numbers, including a 90 at Delta Downs earlier this year and an 88 last time out, and a beaten claimer 50 at Aqueduct. And Pat, you have the number 8 Eliminate, who used to be a Pletcher horse. I knew I recognized this horse from somewhere.
Yeah.
Again, because I'm a sicko and I recognize horses' names now at this point. But Joe Sharp claimed this one away from Fernando Abreu for $75,000, kind of off a exact thing I just said with Fernando Abreu on the 1. He ran a really nice race last time, Pat. I know he's shortening back up, but again, 3 for 5 in the money at the distance. There's no reason why this horse can't get a piece.
Yeah, no, I like this horse a lot to hit the board. I think this horse is going to round out the try coming from the back of the pack in here. He seems to run his race. He's got 2 races in between those mid 80 buyers that just he had excuses in both. I firmly believe it. So I'm going to really hope this horse can run that mid 80s buyer and hit the board, because you're going to need a 90 buyer speed figure to win this race with the 2 that we have on top.
I couldn't agree with you more. In race number 9, I'm going 9-2-1. Pat's going 2-9-8. Pat, in the last race of the Late Pick 5, and it wouldn't be a Bettin and Boozin show without covering the worst rate, the worst configuration known to man, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, maybe not the flat 5 Tapeta at Gulfstream Park. That could be the worst, but the close second is the turf sprint, of course, going 6 furlongs on the outer turf for 2-year-old fillies bred in New York State. This is exactly what you want to see to end a Late Pick 5. Full field of 10, 1 also eligible, 1 main track only. Field is there in front of you guys. Pat, you were going with the number 1, Ticket to Ride, Castellano, Safi Joseph. I'm going with the number 3. I didn't look this one out. I should have. Copper to Cadicius. I got to look it up while you talk, so I don't completely embarrass myself. But Pat, again, number 1, Ticket to Ride. We talk about a lot the rail with these types of horses. However, she's very quick, and being with a lot of horses that really didn't inspire me at all, I could understand completely why you're going with this horse.
Yeah, I just couldn't get aboard any other horse. I don't know. I just think this horse, watching her get out of the gate, she is fast, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. I mean, the pace that she's running the last 2 times on the turf has been very, very quick, and those races were won by horses coming from well out of it. So I'm really hoping. Obviously this horse has some races in her. She seems pretty fit, ready to go in here. I'm hoping, the rail, she's done it before 2 times, 2 starts back. And obviously it was a little bit of a problem at the beginning of the race, but she was favored in there too. Listen, she's going to be the favorite. I'm not going to tell you to run to the windows to bet her, but I will say that I just think that the way she's run and the competition that she's facing, I really can't get aboard anybody else in here. So I'm going to cop out with the favorite. But I do like this. I do want to hear what you think of the 3, because obviously there's a little interesting on that from that front.
Yeah, and Pat, obviously Honor OK in the chat singling this horse, says he had basically throughout his entire pick 5 in the chat. So shout out to Honor. Graciously appreciate you joining the show. This is one of those horses that's all or nothing, right, Pat? I mean, this horse goes to the lead, either finishes really well and wins, or is out of the money, realistically. And as Safi Joseph has taken this horse into the barn, lots of early speed in here, are in this horse now. So hopefully, for your sake, this horse can just wire the field in here. It's Copper Caduceus, by the way. I was close. Caduceus for Tom Morley, out of an optional claimer last time. Didn't run great. Didn't necessarily run bad, though. I mean, neither in this last race either. I know it was a very fast pace and kind of just clunked up for second. But this is one also, I don't feel like this horse has really run bad races in the last 2. And in a race, Pat, where you really can't separate a whole lot, I'm willing to take a horse that's going to be somewhere in the mid-pack. First flight, Tom Morley's 4 for 13 so far at Aqueduct this meet. Ricardo Santana picks up the mount here as Liscano doesn't choose to land here. However, Copper Caduceus, I feel like it could be one horse to just trip out. I feel like the last 2 races have been very good teaching moments for him, being able to rate in behind horses. And again, if it's not the one wiring the field, as there is other speed, just with the horses that have ran before in this race, I'm liking, including the number 9, Unmistaken, as well as the number 10, Make a Little Love from the Outside. So the one's going to have some company up front. And if she does, and if she has a setup, I think Copper Caduceus could pick up the pieces late. Of course, So True, Adelphi Racing Club, good friends and sponsors of the podcast. Good luck to their runner with Chris Elliott and John Terranova in here as well. First time blinkers on. Feel remiss if I didn't talk about them. But Pat, unmistaken for Kerry Brion, Kendrick Carmouche hops back aboard on this one. This is another one that's super fast out of the gate. And we talk about it at these types of ranks all the time where if horses just don't necessarily like to pass other horses, unmistaken could be 1-9 around the entire track. And obviously you see it that way.
Yeah, I do. I kind of fell on this horse because Brion really has good numbers second time out on the turf, going the sprint distance. So I'm hoping Kendrick, being the aggressive rider that he is, this could be a nice little second time out where this horse does get a little bump from the speed figure standpoint. And this horse could, I don't know if this horse is going to be favored, but this horse is definitely going to be the second choice. And that last race was not bad at all visually. I thought, was visually ran pretty well. Against a couple horses that have run better of late. So I think those two that finished in the top two both improved their Beyer speaker from the first time out. So I do like seeing that as well. And that's kind of something that's positive for unmistaken.
Well, we talk about it all the time, Pat. The best place to take a big step forward is that second time out. And Unmistaken ran really, really well in her first start. So second time out, you argue she could take a big step forward. And Kerry Brion has had really nice numbers off of the second maiden race after finishing well in the first. So Unmistaken is definitely a win candidate in my mind. I went with Make a Little Love in third. Again, just not the one's really, the one hasn't had a whole lot going well for him or her, excuse me. I'll take a drink for that. Really only one race this horse has really lasted and ran really well in. Although, again, 53 Beyer last time, 54 for the 10, but the 10 is a little bit lightly erased. George Weaver, we know how good he is with 2-year-old turf sprinters. The only question mark is this horse did run gonna run 9 days ago from the start on, which I probably would have had this horse closer to the top, if not on top. We'll see if this horse even runs on Saturday. Yeah. However, you could argue I just probably put the 1 in third if the 10 doesn't run, but I don't really want to cop out because I really just don't like that horse. And if I don't like him, don't like her, there's no reason to put her in there because it's basically all or nothing, right? So if I don't have her on the win end, I'm not going to put her underneath at least by any means. There's a couple first time starters. I mean, this horse for Fernando Abreu and Joyful Dancer run some decent one, but back-to-back 33 Beyers doesn't install any type of confidence. And Fernando Abreu is not very good with turf sprinters. So that's one thing that turns me off. Charlie Baker has this horse by King of a Day, which turf sprint numbers are basically non-existent for this horse. 0 for 10, only one of them in the money. Miss Candy Girl, Luis Rivera hops aboard John Kimmel. John Kimmel's not that good first time out or first time turf, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, or turf sprints in general for that matter. Lane Luzzy hops aboard City War for Guillermotti. I mean, just no, frankly. Vino Rose, this is where Lascano ends up, so you could argue this one might be live for Chris Englehart. Vino Rosso, though, I don't feel like he's had very good numbers at all on the at turf sprints. 5 for 90, only 5% on the win end. So basically what I'm getting at, guys, is there's so many holes that you can poke in a lot of these runners as there is with this type of condition. But obviously, so Pat 1 or completely nothing. And me, I feel like I'm going to take a shot with Copper Caduceus on the win end. Hopefully he'll just get she'll get a nice trip from the inside, be able to tip out of the top and run them down. In the ultimate leg of the late pick 5, I'm going 3, 9, 10. Pat's going 1, 9, 3. Pat, I can probably take a wild guess and say that we're not going to have any best bets in that last race. However, your 2 best bets are 2 very easy ones. And fun fact, we're going with the same 2 races. So one of us is hopefully right. One of us is going to be wrong. But win on the race on number 7 in race 7. Sione Flash, who you talked about earlier, and an ice cold trifecta 298. Pat, talk about your best bets in race number 9. Sorry.
Well, I like that we feel strongly about the same races. That means that we've kind of picked our spots, right? That's good.
Yep.
Maybe one of us will play in a tournament, the other one will bet on the side. That'll be good.
Yeah, well, right. Yeah, hopefully.
Listen, with Sayuni Flash, I do think this horse just has been, like I said, getting better with every start. And should be, ready to go in there in a race that I think it's between the 7 and the 8, 2-horse field. And then in race 9 is the same situation. But my idea here is I'm gonna try and eliminate underneath, and play the try cold 298 because I do think the two logicals are going to be run 1-2. But I'm also just going to try keys as well with the 8 underneath, get this horse in second as well to try and catch a little bit of a price and make some money in that race too. But yeah, this is a tough start, and I'm happy that there's still some turf racing here in New York. Usually they're already done. They're off the turf, but since the weather's been so nice and the turf course has actually been holding up, they've said we've been able to do this. We did get some rain this morning, so hopefully, knock on wood, that'll stop the rest of the week. But yeah, glad to see it, and it was a fun time covering this card.
Well, yeah, and I did look throughout the rest of the rest of the week. There is no rain, so knock on wood, everything stays the same in that regard. But good luck, of course, Pat, with your best, but also not good luck because, again, we're going with the same 2 races. Race number 7, I'm going with a win on the number 8, Kinane. As I mentioned before, the one race that really impressed me was the only turf route that horse has ever run. Now getting back to that turf routing for the first time since that race with an added extra 8th, should be able to set a really nice trip in a race with basically no speed at all. Would love to see if Pratt gets aggressive. If not, more than fine with me. But if he does, more than fine with me. So I think there's multiple ways that horse can win. So looking forward to Kinane in there. And trying to beat Knightsbridge, guys. I talked about it a lot. A horse that's had so many question marks throughout his career, work gaps. It runs every 250 days, and he's going to be probably 6-5, even money in there. He easily could win, especially with tactical advantage. But if I'm getting 2-1, 5-2 on BU versus a horse like Knightsbridge, I'm going to take that every single day of the week, especially with BU's last race at Keeneland, where he ran on a very biased track, if you will. Really wasn't biased, but horses never came flying from the back of there, and he came from basically from the airport down the way and
6 wide,
and flew all the way down to the end. Ander, you've been so good. I'll put you in here. Late double 2-1. Good luck, everyone. Good luck to you, Ander. Of course, that's race number 9, starting with Knightsbridge and ending in the last race, number 1, Ticket to Ride. Ander, good luck to you, and good luck to everyone out there. Pat, thanks so much for joining me, of course, as always, and thanks to you guys out there for joining us for episode 156 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, brought to you in part by Twin Spires. And of course, until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.